So welcome to the Institute of Contemporary Arts. We're here for Philips OLED Shootout 2018. Now we did something similar last year where AVForums members were invited along and we showed 4 OLEDs in Calibrated, and then Philips did their picture processing demonstration in Vivid Mode. And we're going to do something very, very similar again tonight. Now this is a Philips event. Philips are hosting this, they've paid to host this, and they are hosting it with our membership. So people who read AVForums, who are members of AVForums, have been invited along. Nobody is being paid to come along, they're all coming along in their own time to have a look at 4 OLED TVs, all calibrated together, and to pick which one they think is the best. Now obviously at AVForums we don't think there's one screen to rule them all, and that's not the case. Most TVs have their weaknesses and their positive points, and they suit different use cases. So the point of the evening is not to pick one screen to rule them all, but basically to see the screens working together side by side with the same material and see those strengths and weaknesses, so the members here can decide which TV would suit them better than any others. So it's not a case of one to rule them all, and like I say, most shootouts, what is the point of the shootout? Is it to pick an overall winner? Because there's no such thing as a perfect TV, there never will be. There'll be TVs that will suit your needs, your room and your viewing material. So the 4 TVs being used in the shootout are the Panasonic FZ802, Sony AF9, LG C8 and a Philips OLED 903, and they're all 65-inch screens. They were set up on one long bench at one end of the room and adjusted so they were all the same height when it comes to matching the bezels and screens. The Sony AF9 also had to be fixed in such a way that it was upright and the same height as all the others. This did take a little bit of time. Then I set about calibrating each of the screens in SDR settings for Rec 709 colour and D65 white point, with a gamma tracking as close as possible to BT1886 on all 4 screens, and brightness was set at 120 nits for SDR content. This was to make up the first part of the test, which was in calibrated mode and was endorsed by AVForums as being accurate and fair. There were also HDR clips in this section, but because there's no calibration standards for HDR, they were set up in the most accurate HDR picture modes that track the PQ EOTF and display and track as much of DCI-P3 as possible. I was happy that the first part of the test was being conducted fairly and with the best possible settings for each set for colour, contrast, brightness, sharpness, and motion and other processing was switched off for all the calibrated testing, and this testing would take place in a darkened room. The second part of the test would be set up by Philips with no input from AVForums or myself on the settings used, and was their opportunity to show off their picture processing technology. A second bonus demo was also held at the back of the room with a Samsung Q9FN and Philips OLED 903, both again 65 inches, and again both screens were calibrated and set to 120 nits brightness for dark room viewing, and then Philips set up the TVs in Vivid Mode. This bonus extra didn't make up any of the final scoring and was only shown as a bit of fun, and also to compare 2 very different technologies showing their strengths and weaknesses. The whole point of the evening was to educate and show off the best screens available on the market right now in 2 very different ways. So the point of tonight is to keep it completely blind. Now there have been plenty of shootouts in the past where screens have been put together and calibrated next to reference monitors and all the rest of it, but the people attending have been able to see what TV is which, and consciously or subconsciously, we all have a brand bias. We all think that a Sony TV should look one way, a Panasonic TV will look another. So we're taking that completely out of the mix with this shootout here. All the screens are masked. They will not be shown to any of the people attending. When the clips are being changed, there will be a black sheet lifted in front of the TVs so nobody can see any menu screens or anything popping up on screen which may give away which TV is which. I think the most important and the most interesting part of this is it's a bit of fun, and we're going to put these 4 OLEDs up together in calibrated SDR modes and see just which one people prefer. So let's get started with the tests. With it being a Philips event, the evening was hosted by their picture quality guru Danny Tak, and following introductions and a rundown of what the guests were going to see, the testing was split into two very distinct and very different parts. Part 1 was the calibrated settings for SDR and the most accurate HDR settings, and the attendees were shown 11 clips in total with 11 subjects to vote on. They could pick one screen as the winner for each subject, which would be awarded 10 points, or if they felt it was a draw between two screens, they could mark each and they would get 5 marks each. If they couldn't see any major differences between all 4 screens, they could mark it as a no preference. For the AVForums members, the calibrated part of the evening test was the most interesting to them, and it was also very close in terms of scoring. The screens were not revealed until after both parts of the evening, and then the scores were given, but for the sake of this video, we will do the calibrated and closest section first. The Panasonic FZ802 scored 13%, the LG C8 also scored 13%, no preference was next with 18% of the vote, followed by the Sony AF9 at 24%, and the highest scorer was the Philips OLED 903 with 32% of the overall vote in the calibrated section. Were you worried at any point this evening, Danny?
Yeah, I'm always worried especially about calibrated mode, because that's normally a close call, as calibrated means every TV is as equal as possible, and it was again a surprise for me to win there, but you see that the differences are small. To be honest, on the calibrate mode, I don't really have a good explanation why people picked still us with a quite big preference over the other ones. As you say, in calibrated mode, the differences are small, and they are like also the no preference. People that couldn't choose was quite a high percentage, was I thought 14%, so not neglectable. But yeah, to be honest, I don't know really yet where the heart of the difference is sitting.
So when you saw the 4 calibrated TVs, how difficult was it to tell them apart?
Well, I had people around me who had good ideas which TV was which, but at the same time, the Philips definitely had, for me, detail was key. And the Philips, almost in every test, had the best detail. And I obviously didn't know it was the Philips at the time, but it easily had the best detail in the calibrated by far.
Now, lots of people are going to say, well, it's a Philips event, Philips paid for it, they put this event on, of course they're going to win. Was it blind enough for you? Was it done fairly?
As much as possible. I mean, I can't. This is my first one, but I've actually watched other ones on TVs and things. It was blind enough for what it was. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Yeah, I mean, in the end, from what I saw, the Philips easily won in terms of detail.
I found it, to be honest, quite easy, because I'm looking for certain shades, for certain colours in human faces or nature that make it very natural. Different settings, so different content made me look at different things, and there are some scenes where I couldn't tell the difference between all 4 sets, others where it was distinctly different what set was, for me, producing the high quality image.
And were you happy that this was completely blind? You had no idea which TV was which?
Most definitely. No bias is a better thing.
So let's talk results. In the calibrated mode, the Philips won. Now, this was completely blind, wasn't it?
Absolutely blind. It was curtains up in front of the tellies during source switches. Everything was gaffer taped up. I certainly couldn't tell. I'm no expert, but I could just see glass panels and slight bezels, and the bezels looked the same on every set. Sorry.
The calibrated mode, as far as I'm concerned, it should be very much of a muchness, because at the end of the day it's the same panels but different processors. The differences weren't huge, so if you were to take, as far as I'm concerned, each TV in a room by itself, you probably wouldn't be able to tell, except for maybe some motion differences. When you put them side by side, things do become a lot more apparent, so even though they're the same panels, you do see differences. As far as I'm concerned, yes, they were fair, and it was actually quite interesting to see each manufacturer's inherent preference to make some things work better than others.
And do you think it's important to take away that maybe a conscious or subconscious bias? Do you think if you knew which one was which, you might have voted differently?
I think so. Because I own an LG, then I might have been biased towards it, where I really wasn't. I didn't actually pick any of the categories for the LG, but I'm still happy with mine.
Finally, the last part of the test was the Vivid Mode selection, hosted and set up by Philips to show off their OLED 903 against the other OLEDs in their shop mode Vivid settings. Vivid Mode's not a selection that most of the forum members in attendance would ever use at home, but most were impressed with the standard of video processing shown. The results were: no preference, 7%, the LG C8 scored 8%, the Panasonic FZ802 was 12%, and the Sony AF9 garnered 17% of the vote, which meant that Philips won with the OLED 903 scoring 56%. So for the second year in a row, Philips won both sections of their evening. Obviously, it's a Philips event, you're hosting it, and you've won both categories. People out there watching this video are going to think it was a fix. So in what way have you gone about trying to make it as fair as possible?
Well, we've first of all, the selection of the clips were completely different from last year, and we went for a wide variety of clips. We had SDR clips, many movie clips. We had Netflix content, streaming content with HDR clips. We had Full HD resolution clips. We had 4K resolution clips. So a very wide variety to test all the ingredients of picture quality. That was one thing that's very important in making it as neutral as possible. And of course also the TVs. TVs were bought in shops. UFIL were calibrating them, so the starting point was right. So I think we gave it a fair chance to everybody to win this with a open questionnaire, and yeah, still we're happy to win this test.
People watching this video are going to say, okay, Philips, you've got a very good Vivid Mode. Was that the point of this evening, or was it a bit more in depth than that?
Of course, for the focus for me is on the Vivid Mode, because it's also where in the shops where the battle is happening on Vivid Mode. I think today when people are watching all day TV during very bright daylight, Vivid Mode is important. Of course, we also want to have the other modes, like movie mode, like the calibrated modes, they're the right performance, because we know that many customers also like to have this pure performance, and we also spend a lot of attention on getting the pure performance right, so the calibrated mode right.